All right, welcome back. We are talking about Chapter 11, Multi-Step Equations and Inequalities. And now we're starting Lesson 3, Solving Equations with Variables on Both Sides of the Equation. And if you look at this example right here, you'll see that the equation splits an equation into two sides, and we have a variable on this side, and we also have a variable on that side. So we're going to look at how we solve equations like this when the variables are on both sides of the equations. So some equations have like terms that are on opposite sides of the equal sign. And if you see, that's the case here. 2x and negative 3x are like terms, but they're on opposite sides of the equation sign. So what do we do with that? It says to solve these equations, first identify the like term with the lesser coefficient. So if we look at 2x, these are the like terms, and we look at negative 3x, what it's talking about is it's talking about the lesser coefficient. Remember coefficient, that is a word a word that we learned that is talking about the number in front of the variable. So here we have 2, that is the coefficient of 2x, and negative 3 is the coefficient, it's the number in front of the x over here. So when we look at 2 and we look at negative 3, which number is smaller? And sometimes when I look at 2 and negative 3, I am kind of ignoring the signs. I'm ignoring that this is positive, and I'm ignoring that this is negative, and I just look at 2 and 3. But you can't do that with this. You have to look at it as a positive 2, and you have to look at this as a negative 3. Now, which number is bigger, 2 or negative 3? And 2 is bigger, which means that negative 3 would be the lesser coefficient. So what we're going to do is whenever we have two variables on different sides of the equation, like we do here with the 2x and the negative 3x, we're going to identify the lesser coefficient, which would be the negative 3x, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to use our inverse operations to move the negative 3x from this side over to this side. So then the variables will now be on the same side of the equation. So we're going to move this one, the one with the lesser coefficient. So what would be the inverse operation of subtracting 3x or negative 3x? Well, the inverse operation would be to add 3x to both sides of the equation. Well, what happens with this negative 3x and that positive 3x? Well, they cancel each other out, and then we combine like terms. Now we have 2x plus 3x. 2x plus 3x is 5x equals 25. We bring down that 25. And then we just divide both sides by 5. Because we have 5x, this is 5 times x, the inverse operation of multiplication is division. So we're dividing both sides by 5. So 5 divided by 5 is 1. 1 times 5 divided by 5 is 1. 1 times x is x. So x is now by itself. And then 25 divided by 5 is actually equal to 5. So our answer is x equals 5. All right? So let's go down here to problems 1 and 2 and see how this works. So it says complete the steps to solve the equation. So that's what we're just going to be working on right now. We're going to try to get, if you look right here, we have the variables, and they're on opposite sides of the equation sign. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the coefficients. We have 5 and we have 9, and we're going to move the lesser of the two. So the lesser would be 5x. So we're going to use inverse operations to move that 5x over here. So the inverse operation of a positive 5x would be negative 5x. So we're subtracting 5x to both sides. 5x minus 5x equals 0, so that 5x is no longer on that side. Now it's over here. That leaves us with 16 on this side. And then we just have 9x minus 5x, which is basically just like 9 minus 5, which is 4, and then put an x on the end of it. And we're trying to get that x by itself. Okay, we have 4x, that's 4 times x, so we have to do the inverse operation of multiplication, which would be division. So we're going to divide both sides by 4. So that means we have 16 divided by 4, which is 4 equals x, or I always like to write it as x equals 4. So for this first little bit, I'm not going to worry about checking. We're just practicing this process. When we get to the guided practice, then we're actually going to solve these and check our answers. Okay? So let's go on to number 2. So number 2, the equation equal sign splits the equation into 2 sides. We have a 3a over here, and then we have a negative 4a over here. So we're looking at the coefficient, and we're trying to figure out, well, what is the lesser coefficient? We have a 3 here, and we have a negative 4 here. So a negative number is always going to be less than a positive number. So this is our lesser coefficient. So this is the one we're going to have to move from this side of the equation over here to the other side of the equation. And we do that by the inverse operation. So the inverse operation of a negative 4a or minus 4a would be to add 4a to both sides of the equation. So we have negative 4a plus 4a, those cancel each other out and becomes 0. So we just drop down the 15. And then 3a plus 4a is 7a, and then we drop down the plus 1. And now we have a two-step equation. We're trying to get a by itself. It's all by itself. Now the a is on one side of the equation, which is what we want. Okay, but this is a two-step. We know we have to keep this 7a together until the very end, which means we have to get rid of that 1. So the inverse operation of a positive 1 would be a negative 1. So we're going to subtract by 1 to both sides. And that means that this positive 1 and that negative 1 cancel each other out. We're left with 7a equals 15 take away 1, which is 14. Now we're trying to get a by itself. This is 7 times a. The inverse operation of multiplication is division, so we're going to divide both sides by 7. And 7 divided by 7 is 1. 1 times a is just a. So now a is by itself, which is what we want. And 14 divided by 7 is 2. So the answer to this one is a equals 2. All right, let's move on to the back side here. And we're just going to keep kind of doing some of these together. So I want to do 3 and 4 together. So let's look here. The equation sign splits the equation into 2 sides. We have variables on 2 sides. We have 8d here and we have 7d here. Okay, we're looking at the coefficients. We have 8 and we have 7, and we're going to move the lesser one, which would be 7. 7 is less than 8. So we're going to use our inverse operations to move this 7d to the other side. So this is a positive 7, so the inverse operation of a positive would be a negative 7d. So we're going to do that from to this side and this side. So positive 7d minus 7d equals 0, so that cancels out, which is perfect, and then we're left with this positive 13 over here. And then 8d minus 7d is just the same as 8 minus 7, which is 1, 1d, and nobody writes 1d. 1d is the same thing as just d, so d equals 13 is the answer. Okay, let's go on to number 4. So when we're looking at number 4, we're going to find the equal sign, so we know that that divides the equation into 2 sides. And what I notice is we have variables on 2 sides. We have a negative 4p here, and we have a positive 4p here. Okay, so we're going to look at the coefficients. Here we have a negative 4, that's the coefficient of p, and here we have a positive 4, what's the coefficient of p. So we're going to move the lesser one, and negative 4 is the lesser coefficient. Negative 4 is actually less. Anytime you have a negative number, it's always going to be less than a positive number. So this is the one that we're going to move and use our inverse operations to move it from this side to this side of the equation. So the inverse operation of a negative number would be a positive. So we're going to add 4p to this side and to this side. both sides of the equation. So negative 4p plus 4p is 0, so they cancel each other out. We're left with negative 16 over here equals 4p plus 4p is the same thing as 4 plus 4, which is 8, and then you just keep that p. Okay, we're trying to figure out what p is, so we need to get it by itself. 8p is the same thing as 8 times p. The inverse operation of multiplication would be division. We're going to divide both sides by 8. Okay, 8 divided by 8 is 1. 1 times p is just p, so now p is by itself. We have to do negative 16 divided by 8. I'm going to do the signs first. A negative divided by a positive is a negative. 16 divided by 8 is 2. And I always like to write my answers with p on this side, so p equals negative 2. That is the answer. Okay? Now I want you to go ahead and try number 5 on your own. And only number 5. We're going to come back and do these ones over here together. So go ahead, press pause, do number 5, and when you get done, press play and check and see how you did. All right, see you in a bit. Oh, see you in a bit. All right, we're back. Okay, let's do number 5. 3n equals 25 minus 2n. The equal sign divides the equation into two sides. We have 3n. We have variables on both sides. Okay, there's a 3n over on this side, and then there's a negative 2n on this side. So we're going to look at the coefficients, and we're going to move the one with the lesser coefficient. Remember, coefficient is the number in front of the variable. So we have 3 here in front of n, and then we have negative 2 in here. And negative is always less than a positive. So this is the one that we're going to be moving. Okay? So the inverse operation of a negative 2n would be a positive 2n. So we're going to add 2n to both sides. This negative 2n and that positive 2n, they cancel each other out. And we're just left with 25 on this side of the equation. And then we have 3n plus 2n, and it's basically the same thing as 3 plus 2, which is 5, and then you just put an n on the back of it, okay? So we're trying to figure out what n is. We have 5n, and so now we need to just, this is 5 times n, we need to use the inverse operation to get n by itself. So the inverse operation of multiplication would be division. So we're going to divide both sides by 5. So 5 divided by 5 is 1. 1 times n is n equals 25 divided by 5, which is 5. So our answer is n equals 5. So if you got that right, great job. Okay, let's go ahead and do 6 and 7 together. Okay, so the equal sign divides the equation into two sides. Perfect. We have 9c here. We have variables on both sides of the equation. Okay, so we need to move the one with a lesser coefficient. So the coefficient of this one is 9. The coefficient is 2. So this one is lesser. Okay, so we're going to move that one. So the inverse operation of this positive 2c would be a negative 2c to both sides. Okay, positive 2c and a negative 2c, they cancel each other out and become 0. Equals 15. 9c minus 2c is just like 9 minus 2, which is 7c, put a c on the end, minus 6, okay? We're trying to determine what c is, so we need to get it by itself, but there's a lot going on, so this is like a two-step equation, but we know we got to keep this 7c together till the very end. So we have to do the inverse operation of this negative 6, which would be adding 6 to both sides. Okay? The negative 6 and the positive 6 are going to cancel each other out. So we're left with 7c equals 15 plus 6. 6 plus 5 would be 1. Carry the 1. 1 plus 1 would be 2. So 21. Okay, we're still trying to get c by itself. So that's 7c, which means 7 times c. So we have to do the inverse operation of multiplication, which would be division. So we divide both sides by 7. 7 divided by 7 is 1. 1 times c is c equals 21 divided by 7 would be 3. So the answer is c equals 3. Okay? So let's go ahead, and I want you to try to work out number 7 and 8. So go ahead and pause, work them out, and when you get done, press play, and we'll see how you did. Okay, see you in a bit. All right, we're back. Let's see how you did. So the equal sign divides the equation into two sides. when I'm looking at this, I notice that I have variables on both sides. I have a negative 6k here and a negative 2k here. So I'm trying to figure out, well, which one is the lesser variable, or the lesser coefficient, I'm sorry, the lesser coefficient. So if you have negative 6 and you have negative 2, well, whenever you're dealing with negative numbers, negative 6 is actually less than negative 2. So this is the one with the lesser coefficient, okay? So we're gonna move that negative 6k over here to this side by using our inverse operations. So the inverse operation of a negative 6k would be a positive 6k to both sides. Okay, negative 6k plus 6k, they cancel each other out. That ends up being 0. I'm going to rewrite this 16 down here. And then 20, and then I have a negative 2k plus 6k. So this is a negative, this is a positive. The signs are different, so we're going to take the difference. The difference between 6 and 2 is 4, and then k, it's going to be 4k. And then I got to figure out, well, is it a positive 4k or a negative 4k? I look at 6, I look at 2, and now this is the part where I'm not really looking at the positive or the negatives. I'm just looking at the number, if that number was to stand alone. What is bigger, 2 or 6? Well, 6 is a bigger number if I just don't look at the signs, right? 6 is a bigger number, and what is the sign of 6? 6 is positive, which means this is a positive 4k. Okay, cool. So I'm still trying to figure out what k is. So I need to get k by itself, but I know that I got to keep this 4k together until the very end, which means I got to get rid of the 20. So this is a positive 20. The inverse operation would be a negative, or subtracting 20 to both sides. Okay. This positive 20 and that negative 20 end up being 0, okay, which means I just have 4k on this side. And then I have 16 minus 20. Now 16 is positive, 20 is negative, so I got a positive and a negative. The signs are different, so I need to take the difference. So I'm going to put 20 here, and I'm going to take away 16 from it to figure out what the difference is of these two numbers. And I got to borrow because the 0 is not big enough, and that's going to make that a 1. So 10 take away 6 is 4. 1 take away 1 is 0. So the difference is 4. And then I'm just going to look at the numbers without the signs. What's a bigger number, 16 or 20? 20 is bigger and 20 is negative. So that means my answer is going to be negative. Okay, so I'm still trying to determine what k is. I need to get k by itself. It's not by itself. It's close, but not close enough. So this is 4k, or 4 times k. The inverse operation of multiplication would be division. I'm going to divide both sides by 4. Okay, 4 divided by 4 is 1. 1 times k is k. And then over here I have negative 4 divided by 4. So it's a negative divided by a positive. A negative divided by a positive is going to be a negative. And then 4 divided by 4 is 1. And then I'm going to rewrite this because I always like the variables being on the left side. So k equals negative 1. So that's the answer. If you got that right, good job. Okay, let's go on to number 8. So here, remember the equation, the equal signs divides it into two spots, two sides. And we have variables on both sides of the equation. We have a 2h here, and we have a negative h here. And remember, negative h is the same thing as negative 1. Okay, so we're trying to determine what is the lesser coefficient. Remember, coefficient is the number in front of the variable. So the number in front of the variable here is 2. The number in front of the variable here is negative 1. Which one is the lesser coefficient? The negative number is always going to be less than a positive number. So we know that this negative h has the lesser coefficient. So that's going to be the one that we're going to be moving. So we're going to use our inverse operations to move it from one side of the equation to the other. So the inverse of a negative would be a positive h to both sides. So we're adding h to both sides. Negative h plus h is actually equal to 0, so that cancels out. And we're left with 2. And then 2h plus h is equal to 3h, because it's like 2 and 1h, the h is just 1h, right? So 2 plus 1 is 3, and you put the h on it. So 3h plus 8. And then we're trying to figure out what h equals. Okay, but so it's a two-step, so that means we have to keep all this together until the very, very end, which means we have to get rid of that positive 8. So we're going to do the inverse operation of this at positive 8, which would be subtracting 8 to both sides. Plus 8 minus 8, that equals 0. It cancels. We're left with 3h equals, we have 2 minus 8. This is a positive 2. This is a negative 8. The signs are different. So we have to take the difference. The difference between 8 and 2 is 6. Now we just need to figure out if it's a positive or a negative. So I'm not going to look at the signs. I just look at 8 and 2. What's a bigger number? 8 is bigger and 8 is negative. So that means our answer is going to be a negative 6. All right. Now I just need to get h by itself. Is it by itself? No, it is not. It is 3 times h. So we have to do the inverse operation of multiplication, which would be division. So we're going to divide both sides by 3. We get 3 divided by 3, which is 1. 1 times h is h. And then we have negative 6 divided by 3. I'm going to do the signs first. So a negative divided by a positive is a negative. 6 divided by 3 is actually ends up being 2. So our answer is h equals negative 2. So if you got that one right, great job. You did great. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.